Good evening, everybody. Hello. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Thursday, December the 5th, Camden Planning Board meeting. First of all, we have enough. Do we have a quorum?
Yes. We do.
Okay.
If there's any voting you might want to make.
Oh, Richard, a voting member. I
Like, why don't
make a
you just do
motion to
that
make Richard a
permanently
voting
for a while
member.
now?
Second.
Until June, please.
Can we do it through June?
Through June.
Are we allowed to do that?
That's my motion. Through June.
I think he's going to step in and serve in that voting position.
Who's going to step in?
You.
I've been here for 6 years.
It's about time you were like,
Here.
you need to commit,
I'm more
man.
than stepping in.
You're not leaving.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Can we make a motion to, I make a motion that Richard Bernhout be a voting member until the end of June.
Matt Siegel's absent.
That comes back, right.
There we go. I second it.
All those in favour?
Oh, wait.
You can vote for yourself, sure.
Oh, I was
There you
I
go.
was just going to have discussion.
No, too late.
Half-hour discussion.
Hey, my food's ready in 20
No talk of long grain. Okay, that's off the agenda tonight. All right. So, do we have any public comments on non-agenda items? Seeing none, let's move to the first item on the agenda, which is the site plan pre-application meeting for a modification to an approved plan. Do you want to talk about
I was just going to
it?
maybe introduce it and then Bill will come up.
Lovely.
So as you know, and we'll talk about later, changes to site plan revision or modification procedures to address that. It's kind of unclear right now. So what Quarry Hill is proposing is to add some parking, about 7,800 odd square feet plus or minus of parking, and then a garage off to the rear of the building as well. That's, I think, 582 odd square feet. Neither one of those is going to trip site plan review. And clearly, this cannot be a field adjustment approved by the code officer, so the only other option is to do it as an amendment to the approved site plan. And so, Bill, I did talk with him a little bit about this, and I thought the best thing to do, just to have a smooth meeting when they bring this forward in December, at the next meeting, would be to have just a pre-app and just get some things aired out if there are any concerns. With that said, I'll have Bill come up, and I will say, I did talk with Bill earlier, and on the plan that you have, compared to what's out on the site, there are some relative minor changes that are out on the face of the earth, and Bill will probably likely explain them here, and we'll have him show them on the plan that comes back to us in December, at the next meeting in December. Does that sound good, Bill?
Sounds great.
All right, good.
Thanks, Bill.
And make sure your mic's on.
Check. We are getting out.
It's your drone. I'm slowing it down
No, that was
intentionally.
Google Earth because I've
I'm
just
like
been there so many.
ratcheting
I've been there so
I'm
many
ratcheting the
times.
speeds down.
You need to turn your
Parallels that
mic on,
don't
please,
know
Bill.
that
Okay.
And if there are three of you there, you need to make sure you're speaking toward the mic. Thank you.
Sure. So, Bill Lane from Gartling Dorsey Engineering and Surveying. Good evening.
I'm Rick Mitchell, Physical Plant Director for Quarry Hill. Good evening.
Laura Minlook, I'm the Senior Executive Director of Senior Living Services for Coastal Healthcare Alliance, which is really Penn Bay and Walden County General Hospital, and the Executive Director and Administrator at Quarry Hill.
Thank you for
And your
coming.
last name?
Laura Minlook, with an E at the end.
So as Jeremy's expressed, we're coming before you in pre-application mode for asking you to approve an amendment to the site plan that was granted to Quarry Hill in 2000 and has been subsequently modified in 2003 for the campus to add parking specifically, and then to add one outbuilding, which will be shed for the facility tractor on the site. And I can get into the specifics, but as Jeremy's expressed, it's, as a project in and of itself, it wouldn't exceed the site plan review standards, and we'll be asking you to approve it as an amendment to the plan. And we're here to pre-app tonight, discuss anything that's of interest to you. and to invite you, if you're interested, to schedule a site walk if that's something you're so disposed to, just so that we can administratively get that all tumbling forward at the same time. Would you like to give a rundown?
So I'm sure most, if not all of you, are aware of Quarry Hill is a very active, very busy senior living community. Offer a full spectrum of senior living services from independent living cottages, independent living apartments, assisted living, memory care, long-term care or nursing home care, and rehab services. So we have a total of 207 units or beds at Quarry Hill. We have a lot of employees. We have a lot of activities going on that bring in people from the general public. And we are finding that parking is a challenge and has been for a while. So we've been working with Bill, and he's done a great job to look at our current space. Is there a way we can become more efficient, or can we add some space that's already there on our land? So that's what we're looking at, to try to make it, one, easier for our employees, but also so we can make sure that when we do have events and we want people to come and visit Quarry Hill, that they're able to park sufficiently and safely.
Can I just add something really quick? As far as the site walks, remember this, I'm viewing this as an amendment, and I think that's how you all should view this. It doesn't trigger site plan review in and of itself. Site plan review says that you may do a site walk. I'm just throwing that out. This is not site plan review, so there is no need to do a site walk if you don't believe you need to.
Unless we think it's needed.
I frankly, from a perspective of an amendment, my take is you wouldn't do a site walk, frankly, because the site plan review says you may, doesn't say you shall like the subdivision one, but this is an amendment and not a site plan review, so just throwing that out, but you can do it if you'd like.
I'm guessing these red parking spaces are the ones that are being added.
Correct.
Right.
That's depicting the proposed spaces. You can see that they're primarily situated close to the inn. The primary designation will be for employee parking. We intend to gravel these parking spaces and utilize that existing available access drive in the area behind the building. Previous iterations of ideas going forward were for that area to the rear of the building to be further developed with a pavilion. At this point, that's not likely to go forward anytime soon. So these gravel spaces are a good utilization of that space at this point. So all these are 90-degree spaces with adequate turning moving behind them, and with utilization by employees primarily. There's really good access and clearance and good visibility for turning movements in and out of those spaces. The aggregate, I believe, is the new proposals for 45 new spaces. So that's a benefit as it adds to the roughly 120 to 130 existing spaces that serve the inn now.
Can I ask a question? So when we're talking 7,800 odd square feet of new parking, what's the grading impact? Do we get it? Do we
The
exceed?
7,800 square feet is the gravelled area, and then there's fairly straightforward means of carrying the fill out to tie down, so I would expect that we wouldn't exceed 10,000 square
Okay.
feet in the total footprint. I saw your
But
email.
we'll see that in the
Yeah.
plan that comes forward.
Plan coming forward.
Yep.
And as Jeremy's indicated, there are some
Yeah.
physical differences on the ground. There's a little additional parking down here. That island in front of the building is all paved, so we'll update this plan to depict some real-world conditions.
I'm seeing
Can you
35
walk
on
us through
here.
that plan?
35, excuse me, I might have
Just
done
to
fast
clarify.
math and added too
Okay.
many ones, so.
We
yeah.
both got 35.
All right, not 45,
45
35.
then, apologies.
I think it's 25 along the road, Community Drive, and then 10 behind.
Yeah, okay. All right, sorry.
Yeah,
What were you
I'm
gonna-
sorry, I added a 1 as a 10, apologies.
So we're helping you out here.
Yeah. So we're here pre-op.
That's great.
Sorry, Mark, what were you going to say?
Yeah, because I didn't count those, the same number either, so I was going to ask you to walk us through the plan there on what's actually happening.
Yep, so
Bill, you may have to grab your mic and hold it, if you don't mind. Thank you.
indeed. This is the area where we would be proposing to essentially relocate and utilize a footprint of an existing shed for this tractor shed building, and then 10 spaces here. I believe it's 18 first, 18, one space here, and then 6 more trailing through there. So the bulk of them are along that community drive.
So in this corner here where the shed goes, what's this red line? It's a fence?
Yeah, existing features that are depicted
Yeah, it's
include
like a
that,
courtyard,
the fence
private.
to
It's nice,
establish
both those.
a private space, and then there's also, that green line is a retaining wall.
It's a nice space. What's the green line?
That's the retaining wall?
Okay.
When you do that garage, we'll see it on the next plan that comes forward, but it'll meet the setback requirements.
Yeah, that setback is 15.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And, I should say, I've erroneously stated that we were in the VE, I believe, on the application. We're in the B3.
Yep.
And these red target symbols, those are lights?
Those are design positions of lights. We're going to update that for.
Will you be adding lighting?
It's supposed to add one light along Community Drive. Essentially, the facility sort of needs a little bit additional stronger lighting along there anyway, along that pedestrian way. But they've most recently been implementing a full cutoff LED, and they'll be carrying that forward. We'll provide a cut for that if you're interested, but it'd be a pole-mounted full cutoff LED.
Okay, and just to clarify, each individual red marking is a new light, or is
No,
not?
those are existing.
Okay, because I thought that red was mostly new stuff, so that's why I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, no, they were just.
So the one new one is along those parking spaces on Community Drive, or?
We actually haven't shown any proposed new lighting yet.
Okay.
Where Lorman's indicating would be a new light location, and just below that, where Lorman had been indicating, there's an existing light that would just be shifted back.
Okay.
It's a little dark in that.
Yeah, we've had-
Looking at the southwest lot, those spaces are facing rooms, right? Is there any kind of visual screening between those spaces in that building there? Is that gonna?
Where, if you can,
Yeah, it's kind of wooded there, that little pocket right now.
Yeah. right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So along here, what's, I know.
Those are rooms, right?
those are rooms in our nursing facility
Yeah.
section.
Is there going to be any kind of screening to keep headlights out of the?
Yeah, I think we have enough space that we'd be trying to fit a low perennial, or, excuse me, a bush of some ilk.
Yeah, that would be.
That'll stay green through the season.
Yeah, an updated plan.
One question I had, and this is about pedestrian access, is from your, let me just get my bearings here. It's all switched around, so closest to the Anderson off your new the big parking lot, can you do a crosswalk? I would think it'd be appropriate to do a crosswalk there to get people from that parking lot over to the sidewalk.
Sure.
Rather than relying on the crosswalk that's,
Further back. Sure.
Oh, yeah,
makes sense?
right here.
I mean, it's just painting on the sidewalk, I mean, on the
Yeah,
pavement.
Another one there.
Makes sense?
Do a tip down there?
They'll probably have to do a tip down.
None of them are designated spaces.
So you wouldn't have to do a tip down.
Yeah.
What?
If it's a designated space, then your curb access has to be a tip down.
Oh, okay.
And you said these are going to be gravel spaces, all of them?
They'll be gravelled.
Are those considered permeable? I actually don't know.
Generally not, in terms of regulatory considerations. Once you've been operating on them, they're considered impervious.
Yeah, and are we concerned at all about the stormwater?
You're
Well-
slow, you're gonna,
Well, I was going to mention that, the site law.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a site law site, so,
Yep, so we actually have, you can see just to the east, still in the plan view that you see, That quarry serves as the primary stormwater management feature on the site, so all this water is conveyed through that drainage system that's been built with the original development, and it'll go through that stormwater management.
That's handy.
And just for verification that Quarry Hill, or I would assume Quarry Hill is tracking changes
Yes.
for site law?
For site law, yep.
So that, I mean, at some point, you're going to have to report back to DEP under their site law?
Reporting, yep.
Okay.
Can somebody explain what site law is?
Sure. Site law, DEP permitting, it's site law for projects of a certain size, 3 acres of impervious, in this case, triggers site law on the entire site.
That's going to the DEP.
That's
to
a
get
DEP.
Specific permit for
It's
that.
it's like a site plan permit, only it's a DEP site law. They call it Site Location of Development Act. And traditionally, anytime you have made any changes to a site, whether it was adding one parking space, you'd have to technically go back to DEP for modification to that permit. They changed the rules, I don't know, Bill, 6 years ago, 8 years ago?
Sounds more like 6, I think.
Yeah, so now they give you a grace period in essence to come back to get your site permitted for changes that were made over a certain time period. So Quarry Hill, it makes great sense for them to have Gartley and Dorsey on board to track this over time, because at some point then they get to a point and they have to go back and they have to prove that all the work that they did complies with all the site law standards. So it makes sense?
Yep.
Does that get it? Clarify?
Yep. So you're going to be going back
Yes,
with
with
this?
DEP. Yep.
Okay.
They'll be going back at when they're required to go back, right? Because now, before, you used to have to go back for any change. Now, they have given you a certain number of square feet, and I forget what it is, of structure over a certain period of time before you have to go back to them to permit that which you already built. If that makes sense.
So that's not necessarily triggered yet.
Right, exactly.
And the new storage building, you said that's on an existing footprint?
Yes, yep. So there's a shed there at present.
There is, okay.
The foundation?
Yes. It just doesn't work for the tractor that they have. It hasn't been able, if you go there, the tractor's under the carport.
Is this open discussion tonight, or?
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
It's pretty
I
apt,
just
but
find it, I find this sort of overpowering with respect to giving into the automobile. And I've driven back there a couple times, and I can't say that I have had, a real observant introduction to it, but it seems like coming off of Quarry Hill Road, when you turn in now on Community Drive after parking, which is rather remote from Anderson Inn, that there's sort of a reprieve in this area where you're putting 18 new spaces. And then you get around to this building where the 10 new spaces are going, and I think that sort of forfeits those 2 wings of this building. I mean, that looks like it could be a rather pleasant green space now, with nursing windows looking out into it, and now it's 10 cars. And I don't promote that I have the cure for this. I mean, it would take quite a bit of design time to take a look at how it might be mitigated, but to me, looking at this now, it's like a sellout to cars. And, we're living in the age now where that's brought very much into the forefront. When you read about anything in cities or wherever, there's always the push, not to have cars take over. But to me, it looks like cars own the site now. So, I'm applauding what you do, but I'm just saying that that's my approach. Would it be possible to, where that existing storage building is now, could you get 15 spaces in there and put a storage building elsewhere? It seems like if you did, it might have good access to the building. It's a shorter walk.
That's where you had drive-through to begin with. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. We looked at that to begin with, and there's basically 3 spots out there. That area looks a lot bigger than it is, and
West corner there.
yeah, and I've had Chief Fowley involved with this and looking at this, and he agrees with what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep it so we can get the elderly to the building the best way we possibly can without having them walk from a long ways away. So we're promoting this area and these spots for the staff. This isn't for the people living there, it's for the staff, which it takes a lot of staff to maintain this many beds. So Chief Fowley really wants to keep that open all the way around the back, which makes sense. Yeah, I should have invited him, but he and I had talked. They come up quite often. So we had 3 spots there. There's an existing building there that's very important to us. And if we don't put this building, we'll just maintain the building we have, because we have a number of pieces of equipment to maintain and take care of.
So these spots these 10 spaces at the back that are close to the building, are they intended for residents or are they intended for staff?
Staff.
They're intended for staff. Did you look at, is there a reason why they're so close there, or was there just no other place that they could
They're actually
go?
not close, because the staff is probably walking to the primary entrance out front.
You mean the car close to the building, right?
I'm talking about these 10, I'm just, which are the spaces, I'm thinking these are the spaces, these 10 spaces in back. That's one of the areas that you have concerns about, Richard, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's green now, isn't it?
So I'm kind of asking the question.
Yeah. That looks, from this Google map, like, I would say, like one of the more pleasant areas of the whole site. You know, it's green, it looks like it has some height to it, and it's a reprieve.
Just a question, is that kind of the back of the house for you guys, right? I mean, that's where your maintenance stuff is, that's where deliveries come, that's where all that kind of stuff comes?
Yeah, there's a generator right there too, that we run every week. And it is a nice area, but the residents usually walk the campus out around the side, and there'll be people that walk all the way around the building as well. But most of them sit in the front of the building. The sun comes around the front, most of them are out there. We keep it so they can go with their walkers and go around, but there's not a lot of action out there. And then on the other wall, that's all office space that's looking out through there, nursing offices that are looking out through there.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you know, if you're in a nursing room or an office, it's sort of nice to look out into green. You know, I wish this would just get a little shot of green.
I got to tell you, I've been with Quarry Hill for 10 years, and nobody cares more about our residents than us and myself. And at the same time, we are so limited. It's impossible to bring family members and people that need to take care of these people on site. And we've looked at this for 10 years now, and we've not yet come up with a better idea. We tried to do something with the land that was next to us. That wasn't an option. We tried to do the land with it on the other side. That wasn't an option. There's a boat yard out there, and that wasn't an option.
How many staff do you have coming in and out every day?
In it, say, for a heavy day shift, we could have up to 80 staff.
80 staff?
Yeah.
That's just staff?
Yeah, that's right.
Before anybody comes to visit?
Right, so that doesn't include the cars for residents, visitors, family members, and so forth.
Is that
That's staff.
overlapping or all at the same?
That could be a day shift. So then we have people.
One shift if you need 80 spots.
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah.
could be, yes.
Where are you going to put additional parking 10 years from now? You're only going to be going up in staff needs. You know, what's the next plan after this?
Well, why do you say would be going up in staff needs?
Well, if it's any indication of what's happened in the past 10 years, that you're needing 35, I'm saying in the next 10 years, you're going to need maybe not 35 more, but you're going to need additional parking.
Well, I would say if the services stay the same, which so if the services stay the same, you would need roughly the same amount of staff. I would say we need these extra parking spaces, but these extra parking spaces have been needed for years. So parking has been a challenge for quite a while there.
Okay, I just would suggest that it's going to continue to be a challenge, because you probably want to always upgrade your services to, you know, capture more of the market. And that might be that you're adding new sort of specialties or subspecialties, that you might have like a complete increase in your OT or PT departments. And when you enhance the services in that inn, it sort of equates to having additional staff, which means more parking. And so that's why I was asking, where do you envision your next move to get more parking? Or is this like max you out?
I would say on this land, it probably maxes us out, yes.
I've only been with Quarry Hill for 10 years. I've been here for my whole life. I remember the old hospital, and I looked at the old hospital and I said, what are they doing? What is this?
It was a disaster, that hospital. That's why it's tore down.
So was you here when it was originally talked about?
I was here since 1972.
Good. So my understanding, because I don't know, but my understanding was they wanted to put underground parking under this building, but it pushed the building up too high, and they eliminated that. That's why we're still looking for that same parking that they lost when they built that building. I'm only told that by people that are still in the building today.
You mean when they built the addition to Camden Community Hospital?
No, Quarry Hill.
Quarry Hill?
Anderson Inn was supposed to have underground parking in it. And at the time, it pushed the building too high to meet the regulations, and we lost that parking there.
Oh, that would have been expensive parking, too.
So it wouldn't, I'm not here to say you're wrong, but those spots are so valuable. You don't understand when somebody's trying to get a walker, or they're trying to get a van up there, and they're trying to unload a mom or a dad, and somebody else is pulled up and parked to run in to give somebody something and run out. It's really, really can be, and it's not something that we created. It's just something that's happened. It's the way that I've seen it since I've been there.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I visited this facility for years and years, every week at least, and almost every time parking was a tricky issue. If you came early in the morning, you're likely to get a pretty good spot. But if you came mid-afternoon on a fairly decent day, there's a lot of people that come in and out of there.
Well, I guess we're just looking at it two different ways. Like,
Right.
You're looking at it functionally, and I'm looking at it as like a gesture to land, to like green space, to living. That's just-
And I agree with that. I think we are trying to retain as much green space as we can. We certainly know our residents like it, our staff like it, but we need to make sure that we can get the staff that are coming. We hear it every day in terms of, I'm 20 minutes late because I've been going around in circles for 20 minutes trying to find a place to park. So,
Park on the shoulder with a
right. And from a service perspective, from a licensed senior living perspective, we're really offering all those licensed services. If you talk about adding additional therapy and so forth, generally that's kind of an outpatient basis, which we don't, I can't tell you what's going to happen in 10 or 20 years, but I don't see that now because really the people that are there, the vast majority, this is their home. They're living there. And then for the others that are coming for the skilled therapy, they've just been discharged from the hospital. They need a place to rehab for 5 days or 10 days or 15 days, and then they're heading right home. So those encompass a good portion of the licensed senior living services you're going to find anywhere.
Is there a way just to mitigate that parking out back with some vegetation?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm just...
No, absolutely. Our plan is to be able to do what we need to do and add the shrubs. If you've been around the Quarry Hill during the summer, you've got to go a long ways to find a place that looks as good as that does. And I take pride in that. We have full-time, 4 guys working all the time in the gardens, making things beautiful, to the point where some people come on, visit their families, and I have to remind them, please don't pick the flowers because other people like them, because they'll pick them and take them home with them. So, yeah, it's a tough one.
So to answer your question, yes, it would be very easy, and we'd be very happy to put in what we can as buffer in terms of,
as a
yeah.
way to try to balance this and mitigate your concerns a little bit. I mean, they have
Your
the
smile
right
is
to put
saying
it on.
everything.
What's that?
Your smile is saying everything.
I just want, if you can do that, I'd like it to show up on the site plan that comes in, so that it is a requirement that they do put that in, and not that, I understand and I believe you, but I'd like to see it on the site plan.
Little buffer right there. Yeah.
I think
Ethan, what are your thoughts on this? Do you have anything? Any
No, I mean,
concerns?
I had a few questions that I think were already answered, so, I hear Richard's concerns, but you just look at this site and there really isn't a lot of space. And I hear the applicant's concerns about parking, and I believe, we've heard plenty on that it's needed. So, sounds like the stormwater is handled. The lighting, it sounds like it's being done with the right responsibility. I'm sensitive to Richard's concerns, but I just don't know where else you could do it. Someone could make a 2-year project of trying to squeeze parking spaces in here somewhere. I don't know if there's, angled parking, yada, yada, but I don't see anywhere to put it other than what they've got here.
the thing with angled parking is it's generally one way, so you've got to, really got to make it work to try to do angled parking somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not sure, so.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, employees usually like to park right up front, what I find, And how do you handle that? And how do you get the employees to park back here when there are spots open up front here for residents? And I know, I listened to the issues down at the hospital, and the parking there is just nutty. And it's just, how do you resolve that?
Consistent communication. But I think as Jeff said, if you come in middle of the day, you're coming in at noon or something to Quarry Hill, it doesn't matter where you're looking, every parking spot is full. We ask our employees, we all park down at the lower lot closest to Quarry Hill Road, so that we have the longest walk, because you're right, we do want, for residents, for family members and guests, we want them to be able to park right up by the inn.
Is there a sign that's like employee lot, or there's some?
There isn't, because at the same time, if that's where someone else, a visitor wants to park, right, yeah,
I just
then,
would go in that and stop driving around.
right. We do up by the inn, we do have a number of signs that state that some of the spots are reserved either for visitors or residents or handicapped, whatever.
Mark,
No, it's just difficult to control, and you can only communicate so often. And from what I understand down at the hospital, managers that tell their employees not to park in certain spots, or have been told to tell their employees not to park in certain spots, park in the spots they're not supposed to. And it's just, it baffles me.
if I could get the answer to that, I'd be a millionaire, because I fight with them all the time.
Yep.
But they realize that when you work in Boston, you take the subway in. If you work off-site somewhere, you might carpool to Bath Iron Works. But there's just no parking spots. There's when you go in there in the afternoon, anytime from 10 until 4 or 5 tonight, all of these can be full. We do a lot of visitations. We have a lot of people come in for functions. We do a lot of things that we promote for the elderly. When you take the second shift that changes out from 2 o'clock, they come in, and the first shift is leaving at 2:30. You've got all those people there. It's really bad. It's bad. And I've looked for that answer. I've looked for the neighborhood. I've looked to put it everywhere I could put it. And I was so impressed when Bill came back with this. He didn't do this yesterday. He's been looking at this for a long time before we came to you guys with this plan. We're very excited about it. Very excited. It'll make life a lot better. If you got a nurse that comes in and she can park and go to work and help your resident, the day starts out much better. And I can tell you, a lot of days they're parked up on the islands, as you said, they're parked everywhere.
I know. When you go to work and you can't find a parking spot, that just sets the tone for the whole day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody's giving out parking tickets up there.
We have tickets, and maintenance used to do more of them, but I usually do it myself because it creates a maintenance staff issue with a nurse issue, and when we really need them to get along later on in the evening, I'm not doing what you said. You told me I couldn't park there, so it pretty much lands on me. So,
Let's get you more parking.
well, we can, it'd be great.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying about parking spaces. I'm generally in favour of less parking, but in this instance, I'm totally in support of what you're doing. I've been there with an ageing parent and wheelchairs and getting in and out, and you're dealing with winter as well. I mean, it's not just the further away you are,
Yeah.
the increased danger there is in ice and getting in and out. It's no fun when you're not ably bodied. So anything that, I mean, it seems like it's a population that really needs this. You know, you could argue the point about parking to me much more easily if it was like college level population, who most of whom can get around just fine, but we're looking at a population, a lot of whom can't get around just fine at this point. So
It's tough.
Gravel, I mean, gravel can be, salvaged back pretty easily.
Yeah, we're all pretty supportive of environmental stuff, but at some point you've also got, it's got to be functional, I think, and and I can understand the idea of 80 staff and not having enough places to park. I can quite see how difficult that must be.
It means a lot, and if we can get them down, we can keep the people up. I'm there in the morning and I'm there at night, and I visit with them. We had a little powwow in the parking lot with the kitchen staff, all 17, 18-year-old kids the other day. And they're all like, why are we got to park down there? I says, because you can walk up from down there. Others can't. So it's not going to go away. The next group of 17-year-olds are going to do the same thing. But we do a lot of communication to them. We talk to them, and it's not hard to turn around in the parking lot and say, do you think that person needs a parking lot more than you? It's right there. It's right in our face. So.
Yeah. Jeremy,
So based on.
you need to turn your doohickey on. Thank you.
Yes. So it appears you are all on board for this as a site plan amendment. I mean, it doesn't trigger site plan review, so the only option would be a site plan amendment.
Yeah, is there any part of the code that actually deals with the amendments of site plans, or?
Yeah, it's a really awful ordinance, so you can look at some of the section that on one of the ordinance proposed amendments that I have for you in the packet, that we're going to chat about in a little bit. On the top.
But that won't pertain to that.
Yes, we are
Pertain
for
to
a
this.
long time.
That won't pertain to this, but if you look at, and it's the one that's, there's red, it's called site plan amendments, revisions. See that?
Yes,
Yes.
I do.
So you see the top section?
Yes.
That's a site plan amendment change section. It does not give us a lot of great, good information, doesn't give the code officer much guidance, doesn't give an applicant much guidance. So I'm proposing, I think, a really good fix for that. So the way, right now it works is either the code officer can make a determination something is a minor field adjustment, and then there's an amendment to an approved site plan, and that's really it. This doesn't trigger site plan under the site plan article because doesn't meet the 10,000 square feet of land.
Right.
And then the garage doesn't meet it either because it's not 1,000 square feet. So the only option would be an amendment. So what I would recommend is that you view this as amendment for them to bring this back to you for the next meeting in December. And I would recommend that, Bill, you may want to, just a couple of notes, a statement on stormwater that the site can handle what they're proposing. Not going to cause any unreasonable or whatever. Lighting that Ethan brought up, and we talked about that be shown and has full cutoff
Yeah, cut sheet would be great.
cut sheet on that. Buffer the parking as discussed, and especially in that one area. Crosswalk at that one spot. Address the as-built conditions. And a note on that plan that says you are going to comply with Maine's site law permitting.
Yep, will comply, sure.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was great.
I have a few more questions.
All right, sorry, Mark, I didn't know. I would have waited and
No,
wrap up.
It
Okay.
gave me a chance to get my thoughts, maybe. What is this right in this area here?
The appendix.
It is, okay. And this area in here, what's this consist of?
Sorry, I can't see right here.
It's
Northeast.
right behind the trash compactor right in here.
There's some woods, and the balance of that portion is actually over the lease line that Corey Hill, the cottages, holds, so we wouldn't be using that space. It's just a buffer space adjacent to the nearest cottages.
That's what I was wondering. So this is just not usable?
Right, not available to
Yeah.
to them.
And the
Gotcha.
other side's wet.
Over here? This is all wet?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody, any other comments? Anything, gentlemen, before we let these guys go?
No, I'm good.
Thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again next time.
Yeah.
We'll see you next couple weeks. Okay. Lighting, parking, crosswalk, address as-built
Good summary.
conditions, and note on site, complying with site law. Stormwater, lighting, buffer, crosswalk, as-built, Lola.
Don't get me started about wheelchair accessibility.
On to
Aye.
Workshop?
workshop.
All right.
How long is this going to take? You can eat during the workshop.
I'm slowing it down. It's like ratcheting down the
I just want to know what I'm supposed to order.
We're
I'm not
slowing down the
complaining.
planning board
I'm not
speed.
complaining. I just want to know what to order.
Now, order now.
Promised beverages aren't showing up, so
30 minutes?
We'll get through it. You bet.
incentives aren't arriving. Thank you. Yep.
All
Jeff
right.
wants to get to the Bernie
So-
Sanders meeting tonight.
Oh, yes.
Let's start with accessory
No
apartments.
politics. On camera, enough.
Here, can you
Guys,
gavel this?
stop. Sorry, we're listening. Come on, boys. I'm going to bring the pig back if you like, don't behave.
I'm not sure about that.
I know. Never mind.
You're not allowed to bring it back.
All right, so we had talked about accessory apartments before, last meeting, and you have two versions. If you go down to the proposed definitions, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's on a version that Jeannie had put together based on what I had drafted. She said, this reads a lot better, and it does.
So there's a short one and a long one.
Do I have
which
two
you
copies
talk-
of the same thing? Is that what I've got
No, they're
here?
different, but there's
I mean,
a,
but these
thought it
are,
was-
they're like, I have two. I
Oh,
have-
sorry.
It's okay. I just want to make sure I'm.
So what I would recommend would be looking at the one that has the proposed definition with the accessory apartment, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 below. Okay?
the second one, the long one.
The second one.
Genies.
Mine are both the same. Did we get
There's
mixed
two
up?
families.
Worry about the other one. If you don't have the other one,
It just changes at 4.
worry about it. Okay,
No, how
The numbers are
3 to
different.
5.
The numbers are different.
We can work
Don't
on
need
this
it
one.
anyway.
The long
Working
one,
from that one.
So I don't need it.
the 3-page one.
Correct. So accessory apartments, remember, they're allowed in certain zones right now with no requirement for additional lot size. They have to be, the zoning ordinance today says they must be less than 600 square feet, and they need to be occupied as someone's primary residence. There as we've talked about and other committees have talked about in town, there is a serious need for additional housing in town. Accessory apartments are a good way to do that and a good way to provide for that. So what I'm proposing is to allow accessory apartments. Right now, they're currently now allowed in the village extension, the B2, B3, and B4. What I would recommend, and that's what this does, is allows them in the RU1, RU2, and the CR. Okay?
On the short one, right? That's on the two-page one.
Yeah. It's still in the same information,
But he's looking
Richard.
here.
It's just a
I'm still
little.
trying to soak in Jeannie's new verbiage.
So, Jeannie's verbiage is for the most part the same as my verbiage. It just reads a little clearer.
It does.
So, thank you, Jeannie.
Better, sorry, Jeremy.
So, I'm gonna, for the record and for people out there listening, I'm gonna read what the definition. It changes a little bit. A accessory apartment is a dwelling unit of 600 square feet or less gross of living area contained within a single family or a two-family dwelling or an accessory building on the same lot as a single family or a two-family dwelling, as may be allowed for use as complete independent living quarters with provisions for living, sleeping, bathing, and cooking. The accessory apartment shall comply with all applicable building codes and is subject to the state of Maine subsurface wastewater rules as may be amended, as well as minimum lot size requirements for lots in the shoreland zone. And I included those two because it's just not every lot's going to be able to get one where there's a septic, right? There's a minimum lot size for a dwelling unit under the state subsurface wastewater rules. And I didn't want to dive deep into that. Everyone has to comply with subsurface wastewater rules anyway, so it's just stating for a fact that you need to comply with that.
Talking about lots that aren't on town sewer.
Correct.
Okay.
And not everyone's going to be able to do it, because septics are designed for a number of bedrooms. People may have to expand their system.
It's expensive.
But it is what it is. It will provide for additional housing in town. So then, number one below says a lot having a single family or two-family dwelling shall contain no more than one accessory apartment. Number two, the single-family dwelling or accessory apartment shall serve as the property owner's primary residence. And the remaining dwelling unit not occupied by the owner shall serve as the primary residence of the persons, or household residing there. And then four is when, and this was kind of challenging because we've always looked at accessory apartments as allowed in a whole host of number of zones, but we kind of, I don't know why they were created or when they were created, but what we did was we don't look at lot size for accessory apartments, right? So if the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet for a single family and it's, you want to add an accessory apartment and you're at, 10,000 and you technically would need 20,000 to add maybe another apartment on that property. Accessory apartments say we don't even look at lot size. So this is an opportunity to increase density.
However, it's still got to meet the requirements for amount
Setbacks and
of
percentage.
building.
Coverage and all those things. Yes, that all still applies. But the two-family, we always looked at these as kind of,
I like 4.
you like 4?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's a good.
Correct.
So
Me too. I'll read 4. When there's a two-family dwelling with an accessory apartment on the property, one of the 3 units shall serve as the primary residence of the property owner, and one of the other 2 units shall serve as the primary residence of the tenant.
That makes sense.
And then the other one?
Can be rented out to short term, if you'd like, for no less than 7 days. Okay. And for the purposes of this provision, primary residence shall mean a dwelling unit occupied by the same resident or for a minimum of 6 consecutive months plus 1 day.
I like it. Yep. My only question is number 3. Primary residence of the persons, or household residing there. How is a household residing there?
Okay.
Accessory apartment. What defines a household.
residing there.
Is that you and your
Person
dog?
I
or
understand.
persons residing there.
Okay,
What's
fair.
what's the difference between persons and household?
Yeah, I'm
Fair.
just wondering if it's
Is there?
necessary. I don't think.
Persons or persons residing there.
Yeah.
That's,
Keep it clean.
Household, I mean, just refers to a family, doesn't it? I mean, that's what you're saying.
that was the intent.
Persons though, right? I mean,
Can we
Just kinda
just say
mucking it
the
up.
people or anyone?
All right,
Persons or person or
Fair.
persons residing there.
fair. Sounds good. I'll work on that.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments on it?
On number 4, I would say maybe just one of the 3 units. Added that's just, I'm
One
just
of the
being,
3 instead of one
one
of
of
the
the
other
3.
2.
One of the 3, I'm just being picky about grammar.
Yeah, because it could be, the owners could pick whatever they want to live in.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, and then the other one, I just was, so then you say one of the 3 units shall serve as the primary residence of the property owner, and one of the other 2 units shall serve as the primary residence of the tenant. So really what you're saying is one is the property owner, one is a tenant, and then if you had a 2-family dwelling, then you could Airbnb the 3rd piece of that.
Or you could rent it to someone for 5 months or 6 months.
Yes, or whatever you want, but that's, yeah.
However you want, right?
okay, can I ask a question? If, let's say we have a two-family dwelling with an accessory apartment, and then the owner passes away. And then the heirs inherit, but they live in Florida. They cannot rent all 3 units out?
It's a good question.
I mean, I don't know how it all works out.
Yeah.
You could say property owner or their agent or something like that.
But they're not going to be the
They're not gonna
primary
be there.
resident at that point. I mean,
If it has an accessory apartment on it.
Right,
right, because obviously if somebody has just a duplex, they can rent it out.
right.
But if you have an accessory apartment in there, they can't then rent it out if they're not the primary owner living on the property somewhere.
That's a good point. Now I'll work with, Bill Kelly reviewed this today, and he had no issues. He thought it was good, but that's a good point. Now I'll
It's
run
just,
that
it's looking
question.
down the line, not immediate, but like what could happen.
Yeah, what if the owner dies?
Right.
So, and so if you've got, can you have a 3 dwelling property? Is that then a commercial?
That's a multifamily, and we're not going down that road. This was staying with properties that either have a single family or a 2-family dwelling.
And again, this is limited to a 600 square foot accessory. I mean, it's strictly within the.
But in some ways, you're not quite there, but you're getting close to it really being a multi-family. I mean, I guess what you're
Close.
saying is accessory apartment is small enough that you're unlikely to have a family living in there.
Well,
But nevertheless, you've
Maybe.
still got them
3
in.
units, not, 3 units, 3 dwelling units.
I was not, what I would, the ordinance in some zones allows 1-family, 2-family, and multifamily dwellings. I was not looking at all to add accessory apartments to multifamily properties.
Okay, so
Or to
that's,
create
yes.
a multifamily.
Correct. This is for 1- and 2-family dwellings only.
That can add another.
That
really,
can
but
add
in
a-
effect- But in effect, you could have, right, 2
Correct.
families plus a
Yep.
And I guess
couple.
my question actually does extend to a single-family dwelling with an accessory apartment as well, right? If the owner dies and the kids still hold it but want to rent it, they can't rent both.
Correct. Our current
Technically.
ordinance already says that you got to reside there. The
Right.
owner doesn't address that issue
Right.
if someone.
Right, so it's just something to think about.
Yep.
As
Yep.
far as, I don't have a
I have
solution.
a question on number 5.
Yep.
For the purpose of this provision, primary residence shall mean a dwelling unit occupied by the same resident for a minimum of 6 consecutive months plus a day. Well, doesn't that sort of limit maybe a lifestyle of a resident who, like Matt Siegel, was called away for working for 4 months, so that he might not get the 6 consecutive
Well,
months?
that's still his primary residence.
Primary residence today.
It's like the same as a tax definition, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
pay
Yeah,
taxes
that is
in the
the
state that
definition.
you are in
I
for
still
over
don't get
6
it.
months.
Just for
There
tax
is a
purposes.
number of
I still think this
people
sounds
leave
exclusionary.
The-
6 consecutive months in a day.
Well,
Your-
we were
your
trying to
residence is
define
very-
what primary residence was, and which we don't define anywhere in the ordinance, and we use it in a lot of places.
Your residence is essentially where you say it is.
It's true, and where you file your taxes and where
Right.
you vote.
Right, you don't actually have to be present on the property.
You
So
go
as
on
long as as long as Matt's not claiming residence in Florida so he can not pay taxes down there. And then he's living up here and claiming that as his primary residence for other purposes, to have an accessory apartment, yada, yada.
Right, I mean,
As
it
long
can be
as
my
he's not-
primary residence, but I'm on vacation for
Right.
5 months out of the
And you
year.
can't rent it while you're gone.
Right.
What?
You couldn't rent it while you're gone. If you're gone in the span of the 6 months plus a day for a couple months, you could not rent your residence.
But you could rent it in the other 5 months,
I would
presumably,
think that would be a problem.
right?
If you don't have an accessory apartment, you can. You're just limited to the 7-day limit.
I mean, I think we're going way into the weeds, and I mean, there's always instances in a zoning ordinance where someone is going to be able to skirt something or weasel around something. I hate to use that word weasel, but
Is he calling a weasel?
Not me.
it's the reality, Jeff.
I think he's talking about Matt.
I mean, there's always, there are always holes in an ordinance that people can,
Yeah. Well, that's why we do it this way.
Just making it good for lawyers.
No, I mean, I think they're all good
I mean,
questions to ask. 'Cause-
remember, it already says in the existing zoning ordinance that if you have an accessory apartment, the owner of the property must reside on the property as the primary residence. It says that. And then it says the accessory needs to, people that are living in there need to reside as their primary
Yeah,
residence.
yeah,
So
no, I get that
We're
part.
not, I mean, this is not like a wholesale change. This is trying to just give more people the opportunity to do what some people can do right now.
Right.
And I can certainly work on trying to fix how to address some of these
That's
oddities.
I mean, my understanding is the intention of this is to give people who are downsizing the ability to stay on their property and then rent out their bigger house so that more families have the opportunity to move here. But also, you're trying to but we also we don't want to have people just moving in who don't live here and then renting all these properties out, right? So the goal is to keep people in town, living in town.
And bring people to town.
Bring people to town, and this seems like a fairly flexible way of doing it. I mean, that 6 months plus a day gives you the ability to disappear for the winter or disappear for the summer, say, however, and still manage to
I get out of here.
keep your home and keep a base here
Yep.
and have somebody living
Yep.
in your tiny house or accessory apartment.
Oh, we got to do a tiny house plug again.
They're allowed under the
600
building.
square
They are
feet,
allowed under the building code.
That's a tiny house. I don't know what else. It's just a word.
All right, so I will, if you are all right with it, I will work with Bill Kelly on kind of finalizing this and just addressing any of these tweaks that may need to happen. And then I will schedule a public hearing for this at some point in the near future.
Yep.
Is everybody, any more questions, comments?
I think it's good.
I know,
Great.
I know.
Thanks,
Oh my God,
Jeannie.
you're worse than my kids.
Please.
Yeah, I like number 4.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Everything
Somebody's
is
got to
good.
clean up Jeremy's,
Would you be doing the entire zoning ordinance over?
I'm thinking comp plan. Right around the corner again, too, isn't it?
On to the next
Worked on the
one.
cloning aspect, Jeannie. Cloning. We have to have a contingency plan.
Just go to China
what
or
else do
something
we
for a
have to
couple
look
months
at?
and we can clone
Site
Jeannie.
plan.
That's what I'm saying.
Do you want
All right.
long grain or not?
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I go call now?
Yes.
No.
Site plan administration zoning amendment piece. Site plan review.
Can't take a break in the middle of the meeting. It's too bad.
Section 8, it leaves a lot to be desired, what we currently have in the ordinance. The code officer can do minor field adjustment, doesn't define what that is. And then the planning board may allow amendments. I mean, I'd love for a planning board to say, we're not going to allow an amendment. It's so odd how this reads. So what I did was, and we reviewed this prior, and Bill Kelly and I reviewed it again. He had a couple of comments on it. He likes it. And I based some of the changes I made on comments that you guys had the last time we were here. I think you wanted to be a little clearer on kind of define something or come up with a section that says minor field adjustments. I did that. Minor revisions, did that. And then the site plan amendments, I kind of came up with their own section on that. So I can run through this.
Again.
Yeah, again, sure. Section 8A, all projects that receive site plan approval under Article 12, Section 1, and Section 8B through D must be constructed and shall be maintained. I know you had issues with that word, but we're going to stick with it. In accordance with the latest dated approved plans and supporting approved submittal materials. That just require, what that does is that requires anyone that ever gets a site plan that you've got to stay consistent with that approved plan. It gives the code officer some leverage when he identifies any site plan issues, or if someone built something or changed something without approvals. It gives us an enforcement ability. B, minor field adjustments just defines, it doesn't define it, it just says that the code officer may approve and allow minor field adjustments to an approved site plan if the code officer is satisfied that changes have no adverse effect on approval criteria or conditions of approval. These are generally for things like if a, parking lot needs to be tweaked over, 2 feet in this direction because of ledge or because utilities are going in a certain location, it allows the code officer to grant that. Or we've done a handful for the school project already, like especially utility related, where their sewer line was on a site plan, showed it going in one direction, it needed to actually be over 5 feet or so, and we process those routinely in the office.
Can we do away with the numeral 1 there? I know it's ticky-tack, but
Take out 1, yeah.
yeah, I'm not a fan of numeral 1, which begets no 2.
Under minor field adjustments?
Under D, yeah, you don't need the,
You don't need the 1 anymore because there's not a 2.
Oh.
Under C, you do need 1, 2, 3.
it's a ticky-tack thing, but I just.
A long time since I was in grammar
Do
school.
we need a dot and a smile?
It
Do we need
offends the conscience.
Or do we need a dot and a
Lawyer
and
that
an ellipse?
reviews things.
Editorially?
He's in his own special
I was
category.
reading about Oakhurst, 5 million on it.
Yeah, go make that phone call. Go on.
C, minor revisions. Bill Kelly had a couple of comments on this, and I will share them with you. So, minor revisions to approved site plans may be permitted by the code officer, subject to the following conditions: 6 copies of the proposed plan and supporting documentation showing. I'm going to tweak that 6 because I'll tell you why shortly. Must be submitted to the code officer with applicable fees as determined by the select board, and this is why I had 6, and now I'm going to go down. Number 2 says the code officer and planning development director, planning board chair, director of public works, and fire chief shall agree that the proposed change is a minor revision, that the proposed change does not violate provisions of the zoning ordinance or materially change a plan approved by the planning board. Bill Kelly had great concerns about the planning board chair being involved in a review that was not in public. So, sorry, chair,
Okay.
you're out.
I bet.
He recommended that the Director of Public Works and the Fire Chief be deleted as well, but then I add a note to some effect that says the Code Officer and Planning Development Director, after providing notice of the proposed changes and seeking comment from the Public Works Director and the Fire Chief. Does that make sense? Shall agree that, and then it says shall agree that the proposed changes is a minor revision, and then the code officer and planning director have to agree. If we don't agree, then it goes to the planning board for you guys to review the project. So if Steve and I disagree that something is a minor revision, it comes to you guys.
That works very well when we have 2 competent people in that position.
Yeah.
Sure. But we both have to agree, right? So we could get away with having only one competent person, and if we don't agree, it's coming to you guys.
Okay.
Right? That was Bill and I's,
Okay. All right.
Bill and I's thought.
Okay.
Bill Kelly, when we chatted about this.
Why Director of Public Works getting counts?
I thought it should be there, but Bill just thought.
It makes sense to me why. Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
I mean, as far as like impacts on infrastructure and on.
I mean,
burden-
so what, and that's where I did talk about that, and I talked to him about the fire chief having to review, make sure things are, fire lanes are right and widths and all that are
Yeah, so we need
compliant.
a truck in.
Right, so that was the intention of, after providing notice for comment to the Public Works Director and the Fire Chief. So I have to get that from them before we can sign off on it. I could send it to them.
That makes, yeah, okay.
Is
It's
that,
kind of the-
it's kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I like, yeah, that's fine.
And Bill wanted me to delete in number 4, 3, wanted me to, nor will it specifically delete any required landscaping or screening elements. He wanted me to delete that. I want to keep that.
I'd like to keep it.
Okay, we're keeping it. I mean, if a plan has required parking or required screening or landscaping, and say someone wants to tweak an entrance, and there's a buffer there, landscaping that's required,
Yeah.
we're going to say, you can do it, but you're replanting that
Exactly.
over, right? I mean, so I don't see a problem, so we're going to keep that, okay?
Good.
And then D, site plan amendments, for proposals that are not minor field adjustments or minor revisions and which do not trigger site plan review detail in Article 12. The planning board may allow, and this is existing language, may allow amendments to an approved site plan without requiring a new site plan application if the board is satisfied by a majority vote that such amendment has only minor or no effect upon approval criteria or conditions of approval. If the planning board is satisfied by the above criteria, that the matter may be heard as an amendment, it's so wordy. The planning board may allow an amendment if it is satisfied. How many times do you say satisfied?
Can you just cut out that the matter may be heard as an amendment? Why do you need that?
Okay. I will work on cleaning
Just say
that
if
up,
the planning
okay?
board is satisfied by the above criteria, the planning board may allow an amendment.
And that's not my language, that's the language that was existing. You know how many times I'm reading this, I'm like, am I reading the same thing?
It kind of reminds me of
over?
fixing an old house, is that you do so much and then you leave something, you're like, well, I gotta get that now. Now that looks weird.
That's why it's better to tear it all down and start from scratch.
So for the purposes of this section, an amendment to an approved site plan is one that is not a minor field adjustment as allowed in subsection B above, or a minor revision as detailed in subsection C, 1.4. I guess I could take that out, and Bill mentioned the same thing. I could take out how I said that are not minor field adjustments above, right, the first sentence, how I said that. I'm in essence saying the same thing in 1, so I'll clean that up.
Yeah.
For amendments to an approved site plan, the applicant must submit 9 copies of the proposed plan and supporting documentation along with applicable fees.
9 here and 6 before.
So before, I had 6.
Now it goes
That
to
was
us.
because there was the code officer, planning development director, chair, public works director, fire chief, and 1 for the file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tweak that back down to probably 3, 1 for the code officer, 1 for the planning development director, and then 1 that's going to go into the file. So they'll need 3. The 9 was, I just continued, carried that. That's what's currently required when someone submits plans for site plan.
Can we, I mean, is it possible to get that reduced, or do we need to have that many? We've discussed having less
Reduce it.
paperwork.
What I'd like to do is,
Yeah, though, he
what's
said.
that?
He said you haven't taken it up, the paper reduction thing. We
Well-
brought it up a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah. It gets into an issue with digital submittals. And this was a long, drawn-out process when I was in Bangor for digital submittals on what type of format those are in, and engineers and designers did not want to give us certain drawings, right, in certain files for whatever reason.
We've seen that.
So
They'll build them, they got to pay for them.
it does. It doesn't go into detail on what it says. So they can, in theory, give you a PDF. What we were trying to do is we were trying to take the information so we could take that information, plug it into our GIS system so we can track
From
stormwater.
PDF to keep the,
You know what I mean?
GIS data, yeah.
So, but I guess we can just require them to submit in PDF. If you guys, we can shrink those numbers down, that's fine, as long as you guys are reviewing PDFs that we
Yeah.
send you.
If there was like a PDF option, then they can reduce their.
Also, they don't have to be 2 by 3. If they can show enough detail in a 11 by 17
Yeah, but-
ledger size, if they can.
I hate that.
Yeah, but probably they're not going, I mean, it's a site plan and there's a lot of stuff and it's a big
Number of hours.
area.
Then all you have
labor
to show
that.
is what's changing, just like this one.
I mean, are we talking about the paper that they submit or the paper that we all take up here? Because what we take up here seems wasteful, right? I mean, we can
Well,
all-
if I can get a confirmation from you, maybe like the day before the meeting, that you have everything and you have read everything and know exactly what we're going to talk about the
Yeah, no,
next
it's not
day.
even so much that. I think that like many of us would be willing to share a set of plans. for instance.
Well-
That could cut it in half, just right there, just the plans.
And I think what we discussed before is like some requirements or like a copy of the deed. We don't need that.
You don't need copies
You
of
can
that.
review that.
Right. Okay,
And-
fair.
And if you had a form that you could just check
Okay,
and say, you've received a copy of the deed.
And you
reviewed
have
that,
hard copy if we want to see
you-
it.
you
Okay.
Just give us all iPads, and we could,
I want the big guy pad, I don't want the mini.
The new Pro.
I will do that. That makes sense.
Wi-Fi capable.
Let me look and just go through the whole ordinance and just see again what we require in all different situations, and then I can try to tweak it.
Because I would have thought 3 copies for the planning board.
At minimum is one per
Would be-
2 of us as a plan to share.
One for
Because
the
you can't
chair,
really
one for
fit.
each wing.
Well, I think what happens is right, one goes for site plan, one goes to the fire chief,
Yeah.
one goes to public
I think it's
works,
6 goes to us and
one goes to
3
PD,
Well.
you
but-
guys,
They
me,
come here, but there are 7 members of the board.
normally.
So it's
And
7.
there's the file folder,
Then,
and then there's
yeah.
one for the office.
I mean,
The other
Richard does like
thing
to take them
is,
home
you
and
know,
put them on
if-
his wall. He's got a beautiful spread.
If we're going
This
to come
doesn't get any
prepared,
further than my recycling bin. That's
hold
two
on, Mark's trying to say,
sentences.
Guys,
Chair,
I'll take them over my-
sorry.
Mark.
if we're going to come prepared to a meeting, we do need the site plan to review at home. So, we really can't share one up here.
Yeah, and it's hard to review it at home on a PDF, on a computer. I mean, you can't, I
So
appreciate,
we would need a copy of that. But as far as, like I said, the deed and all the other documents, we don't need a copy.
okay, I'll work on that. We'll do a Camden Paper Reduction Act. How's that?
Sounds good.
Bertie, we're gonna have to make that an acronym.
Talk to Allison.
Plan, maybe the review criteria.
Yeah, when they answer the questions, their narrative. That makes sense to me. You all don't need to see a copy of the stormwater calculations, right?
We need to do
Yeah.
value.
I will work on that.
And I say, I can see the advantage of having an 11 by 17 in some ways, and if it depends on the project. Sometimes that's much easier to look at and manage as a smaller sheet, but
If they can get their detail in there, what they're
But you
doing
can't,
on there.
I know, it's just,
it
I
depends
can't.
what it is.
Going from a D size to a ledger is tricky a lot of times. Going from a ledger to a D is actually
What
easier.
we were looking at tonight could have been on what? 1824, half the sheet, easily.
All right, I will look
Yeah.
to see how we can reduce paper,
Thank you.
for sure. Okay, you good with those?
All right.
All right, and the last thing we haven't talked about, we talked about it a little while ago,
Home to get my
was,
son's girlfriend a new job. Right?
and I don't have this full zoning map in front of me, but I have for you these 2 copies.
I was wondering what the color pictures
Okay.
were coming in.
They're in essence the same thing. One is just a little, I think, easier to see than the other. This one is true. This one I highlighted, so you can see the public safety building is this one right here, right? You know Washington Street, you know where it is, Tannery Lane. My yellow highlighting actually reached up a little bit further on that lot because that entire lot is not zoned BTR, just sharing that with you. And same with the Riverside Hotel. The whole lot is not zoned BTR. But what this is, the yellow, and then on this one is from our zoning map on on the town's website. The green is B1, the more aqua is BTR. And so BTR and B1 have, for the most part, the same identical uses in the zoning ordinance. The lot size, lot standards, development criteria are all the same, except for, and we talked about this before, in the BTR, we require 1,500 square feet of minimum lot size per dwelling unit. The B1 has no requirement for lot size per dwelling unit. Other than that, BTR and B1 are exactly the same, except B1 or BTR allows things like outdoor storage of boats. It's about it, the difference. So I brought this to the select board when I had a meeting with them. Some of them were concerned about the loss of some of those uses that are out there in the BTR, like outdoor storage of boats. Can we really get rid of that? So what I did was I went through we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 lots that are zoned BTR in the entire town. Zero boat storage. We have 25 Mechanic is mixed office and restaurant. 32 Washington is mixed retail, restaurant, and apartments. 45 Mechanic is office. 49 Mechanic is office. 51 Mechanic is congregate housing, assisted living. 12 Tannery Lane is motel. 11 Tannery is hotel. 31 Washington Street is town public safety. 40 Washington Street are condos at Knox Mills. 48 is the office just above Knox Mill. 36 is office and then town leased parking. 40 is 4 Knowlton Street is town leased parking. 10 Knowlton is the teen center. Lions Lane is the SAD parking, bus parking over there. 10 Lions Lane is the Lions Club, which is a fraternal organization, and 20 Lions Lane is the town of Camden's wastewater treatment plant. Those are the only lots that are zoned BTR in town.
There's a preschool in the Lions Club building.
Yep.
When you say storage of boats, that's commercial storage of boats, right? I mean, anybody can store their personal boat.
Absolutely, I would not, yes,
Don't mess with my boat hanging out in my yard.
that's right.
This is your own boat,
Good
sure.
clarification.
Tarp on it.
So what I'm going to propose is that I'm going to send a notice to all of the property owners, and let them know that we are going to be moving forward or looking to rezone their entire property to B1.
Would there be any resistance?
See,
I don't believe so. I mean, this gives people more opportunity to do some residential on their properties. I look at the ones going up. I don't want to see it necessarily in the downtown, but the office buildings that are on Washington Street or on Mechanic Street, 45 and 49. I mean, those are full office space.
Their day's office or something over there? Is that what we're talking about?
John
Morris's old office.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Matt Orn owns 3 of these properties. He is, actually more, right? He's on board. He's got no issues with it. I know that. The town of Camden, we have, 2 of these properties. We're not going to have an issue with it. The school, they're not going to have an issue with it.
River House Hotel?
He's not going to have an issue with it. I will go meet with David Dickey, and it's one of my favorite things to do, honestly. So, truly.
I know.
He's a fun guy. So I'm sure this will be.
He's watching right now. So
I'm
that's
sure.
good that you said that.
It'll be a great conversation it'll be a great long conversation. And I don't envision any pushback at all on this.
All right with it.
I mean, it gives people more opportunity to do some residential too.
Yeah.
And it also facilitates the town parking that we desperately need and we have already leased from Matt Orn. So we need to at some point modify that subdivision plan so that the town can, technically, since we're leasing it, technically we should do that already. But we're going to be moving forward on owning those. But we do need ordinance amendments to facilitate that because right now he does not have enough lot size on that lot to cut off that parking lot and give that to us. So.
Wasn't it, it was a couple meetings ago that this came up, and I think I remember saying, like, when you were talking about something in the BTR, it just seemed so ambiguous, and I said, like, why don't you make it B1? What was the reason for it? Why are we changing it?
There was a reason the BTR zone was created, and I've been trying to remember why.
Must have been because
I think it was when they were
MBNA.
redoing the mill.
Yes.
It was like
And when you meet with David Dickey, you could probably ask him.
I will.
I bet he could tell you. If he can't, he'll make it up.
I mean, it's no longer a transition. I mean, it's like, it's B1. I mean, it's interesting. You look at, Ellis Cohn's building, he owns the Bagel Cafe building and all that, right? That's his. But right next to it, where the hair salon is, not Green with Envy, but going towards the river, downstream, right next to it is B1. You know, I mean, you can stand in the parking lot and take one step and you're in the B1, back over this way, I'm in
I
BTR.
think at one point it made sense, but I don't think it makes sense.
It doesn't. And like, again, the uses are all the same,
So,
except BTR allows some more.
PR didn't allow any residential use.
I think that was the point, was to keep Knox Mill offices.
Yes, exactly.
And now it's all.
It has the same language, as it does in the B1 as far as residential on the first floor is prohibited. Right, right.
so it's not getting rid of BTR completely.
Yes, it is.
Making it B1.
It is. So I'm just so these green pieces up here.
Aqua.
Aqua.
The BTR is aqua. I'm sorry, the color is the way it is.
Does it merge with the river color?
Look in this map, right here, Rosie.
This is a better,
Teal. Okay.
You see the map? It's just that yellow.
this is easy to look at, don't you?
It's just now being B1.
Yeah. I was
Which
just
is
looking at
aqua?
this map. No, that's definitely teal.
There are
Teal?
16.
Which one are you looking
Teal.
at?
That's teal.
Sorry, I said aqua?
Yeah, definitely not aqua.
What's
Teal is
the
the way to
difference between
go.
aqua
And the
and
other ones
teal?
are sage.
Aqua, I was looking at the blue.
I'm colorblind,
say
so
aqua's
please do
bluer.
not discriminate.
I have a color anomaly as well, and the doctor was like,
Yeah, in
I
the
said all those
greens.
arguments, the greens and blues, and he said all those arguments I had, and he said you were wrong.
Well, why you present them tonight?
50% of men are colourblind or something, isn't it? I don't know what the percentage is.
I don't
but
see color.
You don't. Is that why you're a lawyer?
So these are the properties that are.
Nothing, it's all black and white.
And, we always have the provisions in the ordinance about if you're abutting a residential property. I mean, all those are still apply. But these lot coverages in this zone they're all the same as everything's the same except the minimum lot size for dwelling units. I mean, you could have, it's a no-brainer to me.
Makes sense.
Yep,
Simplified.
Sound good?
I like it.
Thank you.
All right. So our next meeting is December, yeah.
Yeah.
And likely, there will be the school's pre-application meeting will be there.
Wait a minute, that's December 19th.
19th. December 19th, sorry.
This one's good, it's from 2006.
So there'll be a pre-app for that school project, and that's the MET and changes to that site will come as a pre-app, and then you'll hear a site plan amendment from Corey Hill.
What's this?
And-
Sorry, go on. The private
Yeah,
P.
for the middle school.
We don't know whether she will have to have all her paperwork in.
Oh, she hasn't had, okay, that's why.
But I don't, this will be the first time she's come to Camden for an application.
The other one you're talking about?
Middle school.
And I think that it's a lot different than some of the other places she's been.
So she wants to do a pre-app.
So,
What's this?
This is for that other private pier.
Oh,
Who's she?
Is that what you
The
were talking
applicant.
I
about?
was talking about the middle school. Why is the middle school pre-app?
I mean, the plan that you had reviewed before had this MET going away, MET staying now, parking changes. I mean, to me, it's,
Might as well, right?
What's happening with that building? Or are there any news on the Mary Taylor? Is it,
I think we can maybe ask them when they come
you
in 2
haven't
weeks.
heard anything?
No, I mean, I haven't heard on what their plans are.
So that's what the pre-app is all about. Yeah, that makes sense.
MET and parking changes and any other,
And then the private pier
yes,
is pre-app.
that's the plan if we get something from them.
I kind of doubt it,
I doubt it too at the present time. Pre-application meeting for the pier. And it's not in the outer harbor, it's in the coastal harbor.
but coastal harbor.
Out where?
Past, on the
Past.
Curtis side.
Yes,
Bayview side?
yes,
Out past, yeah.
yeah.
Or the town line.
And tentatively, I am not around on January 2nd is when our first meeting in January would be. Are you guys, what's your plan? Are you guys around on January 2nd?
son's birthday, I'd be
Not
happy
if I have a
not
good
to
time
be
January
here.
1st.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, if we've not got anything happening, I'd be quite happy to not
Yeah, if we don't have
miss
any
that one,
applicants.
given that it's, but if this,
I mean, it was the day after New Year's. I was thinking,
it'd be nice.
so there are 5 Thursdays in January, so what if we just bumped it,
2 and 4.
It's leap year this one.
went the 9th and the 23rd?
That's up to you guys, I'll need to reserve the room, so let me know if you.
I'd like to keep 2 meetings in January, honestly, because I think what we can do is we can have the hearing for these ordinance changes on January 9th. I have to figure out the date on that timing.
Right, but I'm saying then the next meeting could be the 23rd, and we'd still
Correct.
have 2 meetings in
Yes.
January.
So you want to do the public hearings for these amendments on the 9th?
If we have meeting the time requirements for that. If not, they'll be on the 23rd.
All in favor of not having the January 2 meeting?
Aye.
I
Yeah,
understand.
I mean, that's,
How could I not?
So we will
so
plan
you're
for
suggesting just sliding them back a week, just for the month of January?
January 9th and the 23rd, I think.
January half.
Does that cause any
5
problems when we move the day of the,
Going
rather
to
than first
find
and
out
third?
tomorrow that we have the room, whether or not, if we have the room.
And if we have the room, that's fine. we
Then
can
it'll be
do
the
that.
9th and the 23rd.
I mean, that's, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
I'm sure we have time to add room.
He'll be 23.
We will figure it out tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
We got like a 3-day hangover.
I know.
Just a big plan for the
Does that sound good? You guys good?
Rum
Okay.
cake next time.
Rum cake.
Rum cake next time.
All right.
Okay, who's bringing that?
Jeannie, don't you remember?
I wasn't
You
here.
weren't here.
You were.
Well, this is the reason we all serve on the planning board. It's Jeannie's rum cake once a year.
I know
Turn
this-
off the mics.
Mine's off.
All right.
Are we good?
We're good. Let's
Thank
adjourn the
you.
meeting.
Thank you, everybody. Okay.
All right. That sounds good.
We are.
The 9th and the 23rd.